Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. I'm your host, Brando. And, so, first thing, yeah, hold on. I wrote down some talking points this time. I usually don't do this, but I want to make sure I don't forget any of this shit. And we're going to start right off with the American Pediatrics. They're quite the outfit lately. The American Pediatrics people are really against weed. They hate it. They're anti-marijuana to a fault. Um, you heard them talking about how in Ann Arbor they wanted to limit the number of dispensaries for all kinds of weird reasons. It has nothing to do with anything that happens at dispensaries. Um, so now they're trying to tell you that breast milk having THC in it is a bad thing, and also don't, you know 6 days we tested it and there was still THC in there. Now I file this under just complete bullshit because let's see, I've looked at the studies, the so-called studies, and this is not a study. See, lately they've been doing this neat trick where they call studies reports, reports studies, and all this other shit. This one's a clinical report. And a report is where you take a bunch of data that you get from other areas where they've gathered data, and you kind of look at them and you derive a kind of like you make points out of it. And the thing is, they looked at all kinds of studies or whatever you want to call it, like compilations of data, all the way back to 1978, 1960 something, 1982. I seen all, I looked through all this and I seen all the different things that they got, and it's fucking bullshit. All right, it is complete bullshit. Now, one of the points I wanted to make is that I am not a doctor or a parent or a person that might potentially become pregnant someday. um, I know a lot of people that became pregnant and had kids and all that. And I know a lot of them that smoked weed during pregnancy and during breastfeeding. And don't know of any problems. Haven't heard of any problems. Have never heard of any problems relating from people that smoked weed while they were pregnant, people that smoked weed while they were breastfeeding. Ever. Never heard of it. And you know why? There's a lot of reasons why. But scientifically speaking, there's nothing new going on. All right? Administering cannabinoids to a developing fetus or to an infant through breast milk is all completely natural processes that happen no matter what. It happens whether the mother smokes marijuana or not. All right? Because the body produces cannabinoids. I don't know if you were aware of that, but the body has a system called the endocannabinoid system, and it produces these things called endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids are things like anandamide, which is identical to THC. Right? You getting that? See that? The CB1 receptor will take a THC molecule or a anandamide. I've always had problems saying that. But anyway, it'll do it. It'll take either one of those, and it'll work exactly the same. And this THC one, see how it looks exactly the same, because it is all natural, 100%. There's nothing about it that is deviated from what the body produces. So you'd have to be a complete idiot to subscribe to anything in this study by the APA, which, what is that again? That's the American... Man, I'm sorry. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP. I keep saying the APA. All right, that was my fault. So, like I said, you had to be a complete idiot to believe anything or use that study to make any kind of hypothesis or recommendation. And by the way, did I just call that report a study? I'm sorry. Well, in my opinion, a study and a report are kind of the same thing. Because all it is like you're looking at a bunch of data and you're writing down some shit about what you found. Now, the cool thing about that is that when you got enough data before you that spans back decades, and as Sanjay Gupta's been known to say, ooh, I thought I had that pulled up. Sorry, guys. But Sanjay Gupta's quote was something to the effect of only 6% of cannabis studies were ever done to search for benefits. The real studies, the one that was done through NIDA or through relatively acceptable scientific methods by the FDA approval process, any of those kind of studies were never done in any vein except for to find negative effects or consequences, and they never did, so that's why they never rose to the top of the heap and were never talked about. But only 6% of them were ever looked to find benefits. Now, when you're looking at those are actual what you call clinical trials and real studies. When he says studies and reports that are written, that's the same thing. All right? Do you think these people went to go do this data mining operation so that they can find good news out about breastfeeding and cannabis? No. Why do I think that? Because their hypothesis is their headline. All right? That's period. You know how I know that? Because the AAP is garbage. Remember that. That's my number one talking point that I mentioned before. How I wrote these talking points down. The AP is garbage. Might have to pause that to see it. But yeah, they're total garbage. What they're saying in Ann Arbor, Michigan has no scientific backing. It's just feelings. And they're just anti-marijuana. So now that we got that out of the way, that we're clear on that, they went ahead and did this. And then CNN, of course, the most corporate of all media, is going to, of course, write whatever, the stenography is on that. So let's catch up here. Now, it's important to note that I'm going to go ahead and read this. It's going to make this video a little longer because this is kind of important for you to know where they're coming from. And I'm sorry if you already read this, but here we go. Doctors are getting a better understanding of how using marijuana can affect a breastfeeding mother's milk supply and for how long. A study published Monday in the Journal of Pediatrics found that low levels of chemicals in marijuana like tetrocannabinol or THC were measurable in several mothers' breast milk up to 6 days after they said they smoked pot or ate an edible, among other forms of use. Quote, whether this means that some level or any level of these metabolites can negatively influence child development is unknown at this point, said senior study author Christina Chambers, a professor of pediatrics at the University of California, San Diego, and director of clinical research at the Department of Pediatrics, UCSD, and Rady Children's Hospital. Now, I love how they cram all that shit about her credentials down your throat just so you forget what she just said. But what she said is important. That whether that means that at some level or any level these metabolites can negatively influence a child's development is unknown at this point. So guess what? Anything else that you're going to do with conclusions or recommendations, you don't got them. You can't make them. Anecdotally, what's that? That's empirical. Anecdotal is when you see empirical evidence and you're like, okay, if this is the practice, then this can be the result, anecdotally speaking. And like I said earlier, I've seen I don't know, dozens of mothers throughout my years of existing on this planet that smoked weed while they were pregnant and, of course, while they were breastfeeding with no negative effects on the child observable. And now what you're talking about with negative effects on the child is immediately you can see some negative problems with kids, like when they're infants all the way through early development and into their teens. What do I mean by that? I don't know. I mean, it's anybody's guess why there's such a spike in autism over the last 50 years. Flying off the charts, man. Is that because everybody's smoking weed while they're pregnant? I don't think so, guys. In fact, there's 100% certainty that that's not the case. All right. And they're not alluding to that here in this article. So it would be kind of disingenuous for me to insinuate that they are. But what I am insinuating is that what they're doing is fear-based propaganda right here. And what this person here, Christina Chambers, is she's trying to bring a little sanity to this conversation. But nobody is going to listen. And she even diverts a little bit. It is important to be able to know the answers to those questions. So the advice that pediatricians and obstetricians are giving to pregnant women and breastfeeding women are based on sound evidence, she said. This is a call to action to take the next step to study long-term outcomes in these children. Thank you. But this overabundance of caution that follows is not what is called for. All right? And I don't think that's her that does it. So anyway, separate research published last year in the medical journal JMA found that the prevalence of marijuana use among samples of 279,457 pregnant women in California climbed from 4.2% to 7.1% from 2009 through 2016, with no ill effects. Physicians and scientists have been taking a closer look at the health implications of marijuana use while breastfeeding since mothers in the United States got greater access through legalized recreational use in several states. Again, I revert back to just the same people smoked weed when it was illegal than when it's legal. So this whole idea that you have these big spikes, they're not that big, all right? They're not that big. The ones where they actually tested the pregnant women and found the weed, that's because when weed was illegal, mothers were getting their kids taken away at birth if they tested positive for THC. Yeah, that's how insane this shit used to be. So we're moving along from that, and it's getting better, but this is just where we are. Does it matter? The researchers analyzed concentrations of mind-altering chemical THC and other compounds in breast milk of 50 women and who reported using marijuana. The women had children who range in age from newborns to toddlers to older than 12 months. Between 2014 and 2017, the women provided 54 total breast milk samples, which were analyzed at the University of California, San Diego's Mommy's Milk Lab, a human milk research biorepository. Sorry. The women also reported in questionnaires whether they were exposed to marijuana, medications, and other substances in the 14 days before their milk samples were collected. After analyzing the milk samples, the researchers found that THC was detectable in 34 or 63% of the 54 samples. The average concentration of THC in those samples were 9.47 nanograms per milliliter. The researchers also found 5 or 9% of the 54 samples had measurable concentrations of cannabidiol, another chemical in cannabis. The researchers then calculated how much THC an infant would ingest from that concentration. See, guys, this is the overall theme of these people that write the articles, the people that do the studies that don't like marijuana. And when I say studies, I mean these reports, because there's never been any real research done on marijuana. Let's keep that in mind at all times. And even if they do the NIDA-approved National Institute on Health research, what they're doing is they're taking shitty, dried up, gross swag and they're extracting THC and CBD and whatever they need out of it. And then they're just testing that. They're just testing THC samples. They never test whole plant, good quality weed like you buy at the dispensary. They never test. That's not what they're fucking testing. So none of the fucking tests that we call studies that are FDA approved type studies, nothing has ever been done on anything with marijuana. You get that now? You understand that, right? Once you understand that, you need to understand that everything they're saying about these correlative causation type situations is all fucking bullshit. I don't know how clear I can be on this. Am I encouraging mothers to smoke weed while they're pregnant? No, not necessarily. But am I saying that I give any credence to any of this shit? No. Use your own discretion, man. And meanwhile, you can get prescribed benzodiazepines. You can get prescribed opioids. You can get Xanax or Zoloft while you're breastfeeding. And meanwhile, over here at the National Institute on Health, the summation of this study on the effects of benzodiazepines used during pregnancy and lactation says that there's not really any known dangers of any future problems with development, behavior, any of that. We don't know. We've in approximately 550 children where we did follow-ups. We couldn't tell you whether or not there was any varying effects from using Xanax while you're pregnant. What about opioids? We don't know, but there's been an increase in prescribed opioids to people that are pregnant. And you know what else we know? That every 30 seconds, another baby is born addicted to opioids. Unbelievable, huh? That we're sitting here talking about whether or not you should smoke some weed while you're fucking pregnant. I'm just losing my patience with doing this channel and doing stories about these people that are just totally brutal with this bullshit propaganda. I mean, we've had marijuana efficacy studied for 5,000+ years. The only time that there's ever been any question about the medical properties and safety of cannabis is now that we're trying to legalize it in America. The fucking first place where they decided to go ahead and make it illegal as hell, make it the most illegal thing known to man. It makes absolutely no sense. But here we are. And it's in the most enlightened period of humanity where we have the internet and like fucking computers are like 20 times more powerful than what was considered a supercomputer in the last century. But somehow we just don't fucking know whether or not marijuana is safe. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I just showed you that marijuana is the exact same compounds in it as nature. You see that thing there? And this other one right here? There's more of that shit in breast milk than if you don't smoke weed than if you do. And that's the same chemicals that THC is. I don't know how clear I can be about this shit, guys. You don't have to. Here's the other one. Right here. It's exactly the same as THC. It's stacked a little different, but it's, if you look at it and see what's going on and you know what chemistry looks like, you're not... See, I've been a chemist my whole life too, kind of like an amateur, and it just other chemists out there that watch this channel, you know, this is fucking absurd to sit here and question. Because first of all, you would have to do a pretty heavy dose of THC for enough of it to get to the baby for it to even be considered something that would get the baby high. Whatever the fuck that would mean to something that basically isn't even, it's a fetus. Or if it's breastfeeding, it's a baby that doesn't really, I mean, do you remember when you were a baby? I don't. Maybe you were high the whole time, because when you're using breast milk, it's full of that shit. Anandamide and 2-AG. It's full of it. All right, back to the article. Taking into consideration breastfeeding frequency, quantity of milk ingested, and other factors, the researchers estimated that hypothetical 3-month-old weighing 6.1 kilograms or 13 pounds would ingest about 4 hundredths of 1 nanogram of THC per milliliter of milk. That's 0.04 for you that are on the radio or whatever. 0.04 nanograms per milliliter. What? And the question is does that matter? Is it possible that even low levels in breast milk may even have an effect on the child's neurodevelopment? And we don't know the answer to that. Chambers, who was my go-to good person that was talking up here. Yes, Christina Chambers. She says they don't know the answer to that. And to be fair, we really don't. But to also, to that point, is it possible that any level of THC really matters in the neurodevelopment of anybody? Because cannabis, any cannabinoids found in cannabis, none of it is neurotoxic. It's all neuroprotectant. How would anything that's a neuroprotectant affect neurodevelopment? Meanwhile, mothers are doing things that are neurotoxins all day long, including eating diazepine, benzos, and opioids. But somehow THC, we got to worry about that. Oh yeah, because it gets you high, and the baby might get high. It's important that little babies don't get high, because then they might not believe in Santa Claus when the time comes. Because, you know, they'll get that critical thinking skill too early. We can't have that now, can we? All right, the study has some limitations, including that researchers relied on the women to remember their marijuana use or exposure and then report that use. I'm starting to see a problem with the data. All right, you feel me here? All these research things that they're talking about, they're always these reports written on data mining projects that they did. And the problem is the data is bullshit. All right? These are the same studies where mothers were smoking cigarettes and drinking vodka and shit. I'm not lying. I looked at the fucking studies. That's what they're looking at. Again and again and again. At least a third of those studies that they looked at in this study were studies that looked at the wrong shit and drew the conclusion that marijuana was to blame, even though we're talking about people that also use tobacco and alcohol. We know tobacco causes premature births, so keep that in mind. Those studies that we know that did that, and I don't know if people that smoked weed just didn't admit it when those studies were done, but those mothers said that they didn't smoke weed. They just smoked cigarettes. We have just a sample group of people that were pregnant and only smoked cigarettes that had premature birth with low birth weight. That's demonstrable scientific proof. All right, because it's thousands, not hundreds, not dozens. So even if there was some people that lied about not smoking weed, that doesn't fucking factor in. They smoked cigarettes, they had a premature birth with low weight. Boom, it's in the study. We know it was just cigarettes. If you even want to blame substances anyway, I mean, there's so many other things that could cause these problems with birth that, you know, to just be like, okay, we got all this data, let's pour through it and draw a conclusion. That is sketchy already. And I'm sick of that being carted out there as some reason why we should draw conclusions and caution people. It's not. It's not even close. Meanwhile, you have actual shit going on, but you're not out there cautioning people about, well, hey, maybe you should try to wean off of your opioid prescription once you get pregnant, just so that by the time your baby's born, it's not fucking hooked on opioids. Maybe we should start talking about that. But no, I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard that yet. You know what I have heard, though? That every 30 seconds another baby is born fucking jonesing for a hit. So I'm getting a little sick of this shit right here, if you know what I mean. But we'll continue to read this fucking garbage from CNN. The researchers also did not test what levels of THC or other compounds were in breastfed infants themselves, instead relying on their own estimates. Great. So you don't even know if actual cannabinoids from outside sources even get transferred from mother to child. And we know that THC and other cannabinoids aid in the development of a fetus. Those studies are, without question, more reliable than what you're dealing with. So I don't know if I like any of this. So anyway, back to the article. However, she said that more research is to come. Okay, cool. The researchers are planning another study to better understand how cannabis exposure might be associated with neurobehavioral testing outcomes in children. Quote, that's the testable hypothesis and something that we want to move forward with trying to answer because it's a critical question. This is a little bit about how chemicals can get into breast milk. THC is very soluble in fat. Since breast milk has a high concentration of fat, it isn't surprising to see the results, she said, of the study. Yet the study did not directly examine what the significance would be for an infant. Quote, to look at that, we have to first see if the levels in the milk translate into the levels in the infant's blood, said Dr. Melissa Bartik, an assistant professor at the Medicine of Cambridge Health Alliance at Harvard Medical School in Massachusetts, who is not involved in the study. We would have to measure any cognitive, intellectual, and behavior effects on the children as related to blood levels while eliminating confounding factors such as exposure during pregnancy and the effects of parenting while under the influence, she said. Now, that's another bullshit thing. She's saying that if the parent continued to smoke cannabis, then she would be parenting while under the influence. Look, guys, people at CNN, dipshits that never smoked weed, this person, Dr. Melissa Bartik, motherfuckers, my God, I'm so sick of doing this. Look, man, smoking weed doesn't make you under the influence of anything. It doesn't. You have full control of your mental capacity, if not more control and more mental capacity than before you smoked weed or any other drug you take or alcohol. So just drop this fucking... It's a stigma. You're continuing to put a stigma on someone. Now you're making it sound like these mothers are bad because they're parenting under the influence. We'll have to see what these kids being parented under the influence, that might be worse than them being stoned while they were in the womb or getting stoned while they were getting breast milk. This is just the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard of, man. I can't even do this story anymore, man. Oh my God. But really though, do they have any, not even one person where they're like, hey, yeah, I did this breastfeeding while I smoked weed while I was pregnant and I breastfed and I still smoked weed and I was a stoned parent and my kid turned out like hell, dude. My kid's a hellion. I don't know anybody like that. I've never heard of that. I didn't see it on the Maury Povich show lately. In fact, all the people that always have their kids on the Maury show that are hellions, them parents definitely never smoked fucking weed. Give me a break. Come on. Anyway, she said, so there's little we can advise from this study except more research. Yeah, you know what? And I don't want you to do the research because you obviously have a bias and a stigma. And we don't need people like that conducting this research anymore. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, for pointing that out. and making that loud and clear that only 6% of these studies ever are going after anything that would be considered positive for cannabis. It's always this, and this is the most hyperbolic collection of just complete bullshit I've ever seen when it comes to fear-based propaganda. And I'm not saying that this is any more over the top or less than when you say, like, back in the 1900s when somebody smoked a joint and hacked up their whole family with a fucking axe or something. This is right on par with that. This is right next to it as far as fear-based propaganda. Because anybody that smoked weed before got a little paranoid. And they thought that one little side effect of the weed might translate into some crazy thing that happens in their life and ruins it. Like their baby is born autistic because they smoked a joint. I know they want to go there. They really want to. So if you trust those people to do the study, that might be the next one you see. Oh, whoa. People with autistic kids, they smoked weed. You know, I guarantee you that's not the case. I would almost bet money on it. I want to know why so many kids are being born autistic, and I know it ain't the weed. Could it be the Roundup? Could it be the lead-based water? I mean, there's so many things that they're poisoning with us these days. You have to have the cannabinoids in addition to, like I said, the other cannabinoids that your body naturally makes, which are called endocannabinoids. See right here. 2-AG is an endocannabinoid and an agonist of the CB receptor. Receptor is the primary endogenous ligand for the CB2 receptor. It is an ester formed from the omega-6 fatty acid, arachidonic acid, and glycerol. That just sounds important. That sounds important right there. This one here is the same as THC. They call it the runner's high. When you run super fast and sprint for a long time and stop, you feel a little buzz. Well, that's this. All right, and this is what it does. It does this here. It fills in the receptor. And THC will fill it in just as good as anandamide. Because they're the same fucking chemical. They're exactly the same. If you want to know more about that, then you can study up on it. All right, we're going to finish this off, but after that, we have another little thing where they derive these recommendations from this ridiculous so-called study. Well, the CNN recommendations. The American Academy of Pediatrics published a new clinical report accompanying the study with recommendations for breastfeeding and pregnant women who use marijuana. Remember, the AAAP is garbage. And a final talking point. Oh yeah, when it comes to the Xanax and opioids, so they've been prescribing it for decades while women are pregnant or breastfeeding to the women that are pregnant or breastfeeding, and they've also been doing studies for decades on both of those for decades, and somehow they can't draw any conclusions at all, good or bad, about whether or not you should continue to take opioid prescriptions or benzodiazepine prescriptions while you're pregnant. Can you believe that? What did I say? There's like every 30 seconds a new person is brought into this world addicted to opioids because their mother used opioids while pregnant. So somehow all the studies that you can do, you haven't found anything that could possibly be dangerous with that. Okay. But, you know, the recommendations state that marijuana should not be used during pregnancy and that marijuana use while breastfeeding is discouraged. But they also recommend women to be informed about the lack of definitive research on the topic and counseled about the current concerns regarding potential adverse effects of THC on pregnancy and child development. I commend CNN for not going as far as this bullshit here. So Leslie Nemo of Life Science, or a contributor to, wanted to give you the takeaways, you know. So don't use marijuana in any form during pregnancy. The AAP report concludes that completely avoiding marijuana use during pregnancy is best. Am I going to argue with that? Yes, I'm gonna. I don't think that even should be said. All right, I'm not gonna argue with it as in, oh no, marijuana is the best thing you could possibly do while pregnancy. Their argument is that avoiding it is the best. I don't think so. I think that is bullshit advice, especially from the same fucking place that said, oh, it's okay if you drink a glass or two of wine while you're pregnant, here and there, no big deal. The AAP is bullshit. Oh yeah, I said that already. Sorry. But yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. They hate marijuana, and of course they're going to say that. But what I'm going to say about it is, if you're pregnant and you use medical marijuana, consult your doctor. You know, the same one that you talk about, that knows you use medical marijuana and believes in medical marijuana. Not some quack who studied medicine for 8 years or 10 years. Now they think they're God and they don't want to fucking know about the endocannabinoid system and whatnot. Those guys, don't talk to them. All right? Because people that know what the endocannabinoid system is and what endocannabinoids are know that this is complete bullshit to use this much caution. Now, am I saying that you should smash 24 grams of dabs a day while doing the rest of the ounce in medibles? Probably not. And that's just because you want to be healthy while you're pregnant. You know, you want to be awake and eating. You don't want to be sleeping all the time and barely awake. But whatever, man. And let's just go on. That's in part because oh yeah, there's an overall theme to this one, and here it is. That's in part because THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, the compound responsible for marijuana's psychoactive effects, can cross the placenta. Dun dun dun. So here we are, warning mothers not to smoke weed while you're pregnant because the baby might get high. What does that even fucking mean, dude? The baby is not gonna get high. There's no getting high when you're a fucking fetus. Several long-term studies have found a relationship between marijuana use by pregnant women and slightly shorter gestation periods and lower birth weights, according to the report. Remember that? Oh, wait, there's no link here, but this is talking about this report that we already said was garbage because it comes from the AAP. But yeah, we've already covered that, right? Remember when they say that the premature low birth weight baby is because of the weed? Then you look at their fucking data and you're like, hey, dumbass, these mothers were smoking cigarettes. They were prescribed diazepam, which is also known as Valium, and opioids like codeine or hydrocodone. And they reported drinking alcohol during pregnancy as well. So that's all bullshit. And especially the one from 1982. Give me a fucking break. Most of the people in that study didn't even say they smoked fucking weed. It's almost like you took a bunch of people in a study and just was like, oh, some of them smoked weed, so we're going to use numbers. Other studies looking at newborns have found that babies who were exposed to marijuana in the utero had some other irregularities. That's what it is. They had speech problems later on, huh? Like when they turned 47. No, but they had unusual sleep patterns. And again, those other studies were looking at people that were using other drugs. Marijuana was incidentally, and again, during Prohibition, when some of these data sets were collected, reported marijuana use wasn't really a thing, but they could piss test you. So if a mother was using drugs in general and they piss tested her, marijuana's going to come up, but the crystal meth that she did 3 days ago or the fucking heroin, it's not going to show up. So, and I know mothers are always trying to quit doing heroin when they're on heroin and they're pregnant, but sometimes they slip and they have to smoke some weed to cope with it. I mean, there's so many things wrong with these reports because we don't know what your data is. That's why you have to do a clinical study for us to get accurate information about this kind of stuff. When you're doing these data mining projects, it's such a scam. It's such a disingenuous, intellectually devoid, like, method of just coming to whatever conclusion you want and supposedly having evidence to back it up. It's all garbage, man. And for you, Live Science or whoever this author is here, Leslie Nemo, this is not journalism. This is horse shit. I'm not a journalist. I don't claim to be. But I don't do this kind of shit. Do not use marijuana while breastfeeding. There's never been any whatsoever study done to show that anything about doing that is bad. Again, I'm just saying this because I have to say this every time that they do this, when they take these reports or these correlative studies, data mining operations, and draw these conclusions. I have to come back with, there's never been an actual clinical study approved by any scientific body, any peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed's important too. I didn't see that anywhere in this report. This is not a peer-reviewed report. All right? Period. Nobody else looked at this and was like, okay, we agree with what you did. And if they did find somebody like that, it's probably another fucking prohibition outfit. Like the AAP, who is garbage. Breastfeeding moms should avoid marijuana use because THC, along with some other potentially psychoactive compounds in pot, gets into the breast milk. Who cares? And by the way, what other psychoactive compounds in pot are going to get into the breast milk? You might be talking about terpenes, which are psychoactive at certain concentrations, or even just medicinal, have medicinal compounds and actions. Do you seriously? This is the theme. Avoid marijuana use because you're going to get your fucking baby high off of your breast milk. Oh my God, man. Importantly noted is that there's no research showing that marijuana helps to treat morning sickness. Here's my advice to you. If you have morning sickness and you smoke marijuana and it makes the morning sickness better, makes it so you can eat and you're not puking, you know what I have to say? Then it's probably okay. That's my opinion. And I'm not a doctor or a specialist, and I'm not on here trying to endanger the lives of children or infants or babies in the womb or fetuses or whatever. But that's just my opinion. And I'm sticking to it because I've seen a lot of data and a lot of testimonials, and there's whole groups that have been formed for mothers against this prohibition attitude and stigma. And to be honest, we're all sick of this shit. This is discrimination. This is discriminating against mothers who use cannabis. Because we don't see anything about all these warnings about mothers using alcohol, benzos, any other drugs. So far, you're acting like that's safe. But this is dangerous. This cannot be accepted because your baby might get high. Don't worry about your baby getting addicted to opioids. Keep taking those Vicodins and those oxys. New report acknowledges that some pregnant women may use marijuana because they've heard that it eases morning sickness. They've heard it because that's what fucking millions of mothers have said. Millions throughout history have said, yes, this is like the best fucking thing for morning sickness I've ever seen in my life. So if you got a problem with that, talk to all those mothers that said it worked great. This is such a bullshit. Is this the writing of the writer of this article? Come on. Many mothers have heard that you know why they've heard that? Because people are saying it. And you know why they're saying it? Because it's fucking true. How fucking easy is this? People actually read this article and they're just like numb. Oh my God, man. If I breastfeed with my weed in there, the baby's gonna, get high. And then if I'm trying to treat morning sickness and I have a fetus in there, what? It's not gonna help the morning sickness? That's not the case, dude. You've canceled that out with your own sentence. When you say that people have heard that it eases morning sickness, where do you think they heard that from? You think there's people like me out there just lying to people? I've never got anybody pregnant, been pregnant myself, I've known a lot of girls that were pregnant and had kids and had morning sickness and used weed to treat morning sickness. And you know what? They said it worked. And that's why you're saying that they've heard that it works, because it fucking works. I'm beating the dead horse, I know. But there are no research studies that say marijuana is effective for nausea and pregnancy. And you know what else there isn't any research studies for? Anything in this that you've been talking about so far. Or, furthermore, anything CNN was talking about. There hasn't been any actual research studies for any of this shit. So everything you're saying is complete dog shit. If nausea during pregnancy is a problem, there are several treatments approved for use, including vitamin B6 and doxylamine, which don't work for a lot of people. And who knows how safe those are? We don't know. Just like the opioids and the benzos, we don't really know. Because I've looked and there ain't no really conclusive studies on that. But somehow you guys have made all kinds of conclusions about marijuana use in pregnancy and breastfeeding and all this other shit, morning sickness. But you don't have any fucking actual research studies for it. But you've made a lot of conclusions and you're talking a lot of shit. Even though we know that there's cannabinoids in breast milk, regardless of whether the mother uses fucking cannabis or not. Not just CBD, but CBD and THC like cannabinoids, exact compounds looking like the exact same molecule side by side, works on the exact same receptors in the body, but somehow it's dangerous to administer cannabinoids, and endocannabinoids are fine. They didn't even say that. They never said that they never even mentioned endocannabinoids in any of this shit. And you know what that tells me? Is that they're actually being intellectually dishonest. By not telling you the full story, by omitting seriously important fucking details. This is just such horse shit that I just want to caution anybody who's about to comment down below that I'm crazy for recommending. But I'm going to go ahead right now and recommend smoking weed for pregnancy and for morning sickness, for developing fetuses, to enhance the breast milk, to make sure there's enough cannabinoids in it. Because we know now that when you're feeding your children cereal and other products that you buy at the store, There's a possibility that there's glyphosate in them, in that shit. And we know that glyphosate causes cancer. That's a fucking fact now. So, oops. Checkmate. And guess what? It's not going to hurt anybody to administer extra cannabinoids anytime throughout their life. This article, this Leslie Nemo is so intellectually just dishonest and just a butcher, just a hack, that she goes on to say doctors who treat sexually active women should talk to them about drug use. As in, we should just, go on an all-out Reefer Madness campaign here. Accidental pregnancies happen, and if someone's using drugs in the weeks before they know they're pregnant, they could cause problems for a fetus in the most critical stages. But they're not talking about anything but fucking weed here. She blankets it out with, they should talk to them about drug use. But this article is about weed, because weed is the biggest thing, One of the big things they say is, marijuana use is the second biggest thing that people do to get intoxicated. I don't like the classification of intoxicated because it doesn't make you intoxicated. It makes you high. Being intoxicated implies that there's some kind of toxic property that you could die eventually if you do too much of it. It's not fucking the case with weed. And you're not impaired either because you still have full control of your faculties when you're on cannabis. Impairment means you don't. That's alcohol. That's, numbed out on pills. Quote, one of the hopes of our recommendation is that pediatricians will take a more proactive role in counseling their patients who are sexually active. Pediatricians don't talk to fucking women that aren't pregnant yet, dipshit. This doesn't make any sense. So you're supposed to talk to women who are sexually active before they're even pregnant? Pediatrician? Why don't you pediatricians just get the fuck out of everybody's business, man? I don't see what you're doing that's so special. If you really cared about children, we'd hear you talking about people like Alexis Bortel and all the other medical refugees that had to move to Colorado because wherever they live has prohibition to the point where they can't even get medicine to kids that would die without it. As we've seen with Amelia in Minnesota, people will die without this medicine or without the proper administration of THC as a part of it. I don't know. See, I don't know the details of that case. So I don't want to say that about the Amelia case. I don't want to use that in that way. But I just want to say that if we keep going down this crazy road here where we don't have research studies, we just use this correlation and causation data mining bullshit to issue Reefer Madness on CNN, then we're never going to get anywhere, guys, because the public is always going to have this stigma as long as these people are still allowed to push this fucking garbage out. And you know how you can tell that this Leslie Nemo person is a total hack, garbage person? And of course, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration still classifies marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug, which puts up a lot of barriers for research. We don't care about that. This person here shouldn't even have been involved in this whole thing. This is I can't do this anymore. I'm almost completely done with doing stories that relate to Reefer Madness. But sometimes I feel like this shit is so big. It's CNN. This thing is like viral. I don't know about that, but it's pretty big. CNN's going to probably have like, I don't know, I don't watch TV, so I don't know how they do it on the actual channel. But what I'm guessing is that they're going to go throughout the day, sometime this week or maybe throughout the week here and there, and every fucking news anchor that they have on payroll is going to give this story some breath. And if that happens, I'll be pretty pissed off. if that don't happen, I'll feel a little bit like maybe I was responsible because I fucking pushed back on it so hard. I hope. I don't know. I don't have a very big audience, but I'm gonna say this: is this shit? I don't know. I'm torn, man. I can't keep doing these stories, but at the same time, I can't let this shit go through without a fight. You know. That's all I got on it. If you like it, hit the like button. I mean, say something below. I don't know. I mean, it's just, it's hard to keep going, guys. This shit is just crazy.